I think that as moms, we tend to get caught up in idealized self-care instead of real life self-care.
Hello, and welcome to the Connect podcast. This show is all about helping you connect to your soul's calling so you can take action on it. Because the sweetest success is a blend of discovering your purpose with the inner drive to bring it to life. I'm Sheila Botello, health coach, lifestyle entrepreneur, and mom of two, best known for my online wellness programs, mentoring, and self-love passion. Listen in for inspiring interviews, solo chats, and Q&A sessions that will move you past overwhelm towards what lights you up. Stop accepting good enough and go for your version of great in your health, business, and relationships. Let's get started. Hi, welcome to today's interview. If you find yourself juggling work and family life and feel like your physical exercise constantly falls to the bottom of the priority list, get ready for some encouragement. Naomi Gottlieb-Miller is a mom, yoga teacher, self-care advocate, activist, and a huge Star Trek nerd. She's been practicing yoga for 20 years, teaching for 15, and is known for creative, playful, and intentionally sequenced yoga classes. She works with busy moms, helping them make more time for themselves on and off their yoga mat. We had such a fun conversation talking all about the path to work you were meant to do, the dynamics of family and airforce life, and feeling grounded in the process. Enjoy the interview. Naomi, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you are here, and I'm glad that things worked out for us to be able to finally do this, because I know that last time we had scheduled to get together, there was a little bit of Mother Nature interfering.
Yes.
What was the name of the hurricane?
Sally.
Sally. Sally came and rained on our parade. Well, I'm glad that you're all well and everybody's okay and that we were able to reschedule. And now it's sunny where I am. Is it sunny where you are?
It is. It's gorgeous here. It's beautiful.
And where is here?
So I currently live in Northwest Florida, and we don't really get seasons here. So technically it's fall, but I am still outside in like a tank top and shorts. So it's very surreal having grown up, in the mid-Atlantic where, like you get seasons.
So where did you grow up? And then where have you lived since?
I grew up in the DC area, so Washington, DC. And my parents, when I was grade school age, moved to the suburbs of DC in Maryland. And that very much informed, not the suburbs so much, but like living so close to DC and really growing up in DC, like hanging out with my friends in the city and, then later working in the city and being so close to the capital and, just all of that energy just really informed so much of who I am. I lived there except for 6 years when I lived in New York City, when I was in school. And then a couple years after, I lived in DC or the DC area up until 2017 when we moved to Texas. And we were in Texas for about 15 months. And then we moved to New Mexico for about 5 months. And then we moved here to Florida. The past couple of years have had a lot of instability in some ways. And we're here in Florida for another maybe year, maybe less, maybe more. Who knows? Like that's military life really. But I kind of enjoy that. I didn't think that I would like it. And I actually really like the moving around and being in different places and, just like seeing different parts of the country and different parts of the world. Like that is a gift actually that not everyone gets. So I look at it that way. I look at it as a way to explore more and to see more of the world.
You are definitely an explorer. I see that in the things that you post, and I see your growing up in the DC area. I see that as forming the importance of having a political mindset, like understanding what's happening in politics, understanding the importance of being involved in the decisions that are happening in the world. I really feel like you have a strong voice, and yet you're open to other people's voices, which is so powerful and hard to find. And I love how you are imparting so much wisdom to your kids. And that's actually one way that you probably find it allows you to meet new people in new areas is having kids, right? That you can't help but be connecting with people when you got kids and school and all of that.
Yeah, they're the best little wing people, really, when it comes to like, when it comes to like having adult friendships because, like you have that immediate sort of like, oh, our kids are the same age. Oh, that's really cool. They go to the same school, like, what things else do we have in common, and it has been really helpful. I like to think of myself as an extrovert, like an introvert's body. If you get me into that space, like I'll talk, but it just takes me like a little time to get, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
So the kids really do help.
Oh, they are an incredible form of ice breaking in relationships for sure. That's my experience with my kids too. Talk to me about what drew you to yoga and how long you've been practicing and teaching, and then also about what shifted you into teaching other instructors in the yoga space.
Yeah. So what got me into yoga was that I was in school in New York City. I was 18 years old and I got into school for photography. So it was not my first choice. I had applied to NYU to go for theater, particularly musical theater, because I was a dancer and an actress and I loved being on stage and I, like loved that energy. And I'd been doing it since I was a kid and I didn't get in. And it was the only school that I applied to. And so I kind of had to think fast because I didn't want to stay home with my parents. I didn't like the idea of not going to college if I had the option. And I am a very fortunate person in that I did have the option. And so I applied to art school instead and I got in very easily. But that sort of setback of not getting into acting school, not getting into that big dream, was that when I got to New York City, I was terrified to go on auditions. I was terrified to go to dance classes in New York. They felt so intimidating. And I instead, like I needed something that was physical, but that wasn't as intimidating to me, that felt like a lower threshold. And I had grown up with a dad who was a meditator. So, I'd see my dad sitting on his zafu or seeing him sitting on like some comfortable chair and just sitting in meditation. And so I grew up with that. And later, my parents also found yoga, the physical practice of it. And because I don't like doing what people tell me to do, particularly my parents, I resisted it for a really long time. They were like, you will love this. You should go. And I was like, no, I'm going to find my own way. But I went to yoga anyway, and I loved it. A couple of years later, I found a teacher that I really loved in Elena Brower and also Amy Ippoliti. And that led me into this place of wanting to teach. And I should back up and say that it was really actually yoga that taught me how to love myself and how to initiated recovery from an eating disorder for me. Yoga is really what taught me that I wanted to live and I wanted
beautiful.
to like live in my body, that like having an eating disorder was slowly killing me and it was stripping me from myself, and it was causing me to lose who I was and to lose, I mean, not only physical pounds, but like really lose myself,
Yeah.
And yoga really helped me find that sense of wholeness and a sense of connection again. And part of that was having really good teachers, but part of that is just embedded in the practice. The word yoga, the root word is yuj, which means to yoke. And often, depending on the philosophical background of your study, some people will interpret that to mean union. But my teachers interpreted it as connection, right? When you yoke, an oxen, for example, to a cart, you can also unhook it, right? So it's the idea of you're hooking yourself to something, but you also have the option of unhooking and then rehooking, creating those connections where they best serve you, where you are most supported, where you can pull and be pulled, where there's that equal connection. Even that idea of connection, of I am part of something bigger, helped me find my way back to myself. And that made me want to teach other people. I was 23 at the time, and I did my first teacher training when I was 24, and I've been teaching for 15 years. And it shifted for me over time. The teacher that I was when I was 24 is very different than the teacher that I am now at 39.
Yes. The transformation you took of rebelling against your parents to then it's like the core of your life right now. And now here
So
you
true.
are, and I watch you with your kids, and your kids are very involved in their own practice. Isn't there a YouTube series of your daughter leading yoga? And she's
Yes.
how old?
She's 7.
She's just like, this is what we are doing today. And it's so sweet to watch because you see how much a part of you she is, but then you also see the edges of who her little personality is. Yeah, so watching your kids with you just makes me think about how you have changed during motherhood with each child coming along. First, let me back up a little bit. I would love to hear, talking about your partner and your children, what are your favorite qualities about each of them? I just love to hear this, especially now, because right now, with the way school has been whacked out and everybody's, having to do multiple things, including educating their kids while they're trying to go about their day-to-day life, they need that reminder of, right, there are qualities about my kids I love and my partner. So tell me what comes up for you.
Oh my God, that's such a good question. I am indebted to you for asking that question. Um, I'll start with my husband. I love his brain. His brain is so sexy. I'm
I
just
love that.
he has the sexiest brain. But I also really I love, I love that he can make me laugh even when I'm angry at him. Like, I love that it's humor in a lot of ways that is what connects us. Um, I love how much of like an undercover activist he is. Like, I mean, he absolutely is, but this is a man who is in the military, who is, who was also in the Peace Corps, right?
Wow.
Who has a black belt in karate, who is also a yoga teacher,
Oh,
who
wow.
has, I know, who, I mean, when he tells people all of that, people are like, what? Like, who are you? Like, you're a unicorn. Like, that's not normal. Um, but he'll go to work and he works with a lot of guys who have less, we'll say, less of a broad experience. Like, their experience is just so much more limited, in that, like, maybe they grew up in a very particular way and they haven't really traveled beyond that sphere of influence other than the cities they've lived in, right? So that the sphere of influence is fairly limited. And so he comes in, and also we're vegan, right? So, like, he comes
Mhm.
in, this like progressive vegan, yoga teaching, black belt in karate, once served in the Peace Corps kind of a guy. And he wins people over because he will listen. Like, he will let people talk about like their, totally whacked out stuff. And he doesn't make people feel threatened. Like, he just sits and listens, and then he's like, okay, now you get to hear what I have to say, and he never pushes an agenda on anybody. He just like lives his yoga. And I love that about him.
Tell me, each of your children, their ages, and then what's a quality in each of them that you really enjoy?
So my oldest is 7. Um, and I, oh God, God, there are so many things that I love about her. I don't know if I can pick one. But I love her just like a sense of adventure, like when she's really in it, like she loves to climb trees, like she loves to explore. Um, and sometimes she has to be convinced to do it, but that's just like I was, like, and still sometimes am. Like, I remember, when I was in high school and in college, my best girlfriends would want to go out dancing, and I was like, oh, I don't want to go out. Like, I would have that, like, I just want to hang out with you guys, I don't want to go to a club. Like, I would just have this like very, like, let's just do this. And then of course we'd go out and I would have a ton of fun,
Yes.
and it was like, so sometimes I needed that convincing to get there, and she often does too. But when she gets there, she's like, this is the coolest. And she's so brave. Like, she's so brave. And I love that about her. I love her creativity. Like, there's so many things about her. She's also super smart. I love her. My son is 4, and he, oh God, in some ways, like, what I love about him is that he's so incredibly self-sufficient. Like, he can entertain himself for hours. And which also sometimes breaks my heart because I feel badly about it. It's like, oh, I'm not giving him the attention that he needs. I'm not, like there for him. But I mean, even just today as an example, like he has not, like his older sister is like the puzzle queen. Like when she was 2 years old, she was doing like huge puzzles. When she was 3, she was doing like 60-piece and 100-piece puzzles. Like when she was 4 and 5, she was like starting to work on like 300-piece puzzles. I mean, this is a kid who just like has a brain for puzzles. And my son like just never really seemed into it. But today, all of a sudden he was like, I want to do a puzzle. And he got this like massive puzzle out and he put it together almost all by himself. And he just sat in there playing. And then earlier on in the year, like he had taken himself outside and he was digging a hole in, the side of our lawn with small little shovel. And he made like this little play, mud pit for himself and just played out there forever. He can come up with things to entertain himself forever. And I think that's incredible. But what I also really love about him right now, and I hope he never loses this, and I even was talking about this in my Facebook group recently, is that he tells me, I love you, mommy, like 500 times a day.
Oh, I love that.
And he doesn't do it so that he hears it back from me. Although like we have a game where it's like, I love you 2-2, I love you 3-3, I love you 4-4. Like we go all the way up to 10 and it's super cute. But he does it just to say it. And like, I just, I was asking other women in my group about this, like, do your husbands say, I love you? Because my husband says that happily all the time, but his dad never says it to him.
Right.
And my dad says it to me. And, like I grew up with a dad that said it all the time, but like, my husband says like, I tell my dad I love him and he's just like, whatever. Like he kind of blows it off and he's like, I know that he loves me, but he just doesn't say those words.
Yeah.
And so I just love that my son still says that all the time. And so I just encourage it. Like he says, I love you. And I'm like, I love you, mommy. Or, I love you so much. Like, I just say it back to him all the time because I think it's so, so important, having little boys who are in touch with their love as much as they are. I mean, he also likes, playing with lightsabers and, like smashing things down and breaking things. So like, balance, but, so it's, but I love that he has both of those things. So I hope that stays and we'll work really hard to make sure that stays. And my baby daughter, who is 13 months old, she is an absolute joy. She makes me smile. She is so full of love. She's so sweet. And she also like, she's a terror because she can climb onto anything and everything. She's 13 months old and she's like running already. Like she's unstoppable. She can already get off our bed to the ground. Like she can climb up onto things and get off of things. Like it's no big deal.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I love that. And imagine if when people got together, they actually would talk about these things more, right? Like so often we hear about what's not working, what people are upset about. And I feel like even when we do this, it reminds us to share it with each other also, like in our family, share it with our spouse, share it with our kids. And I got to say, I'm one of those very blessed mamas that my boys still say, I love you at 12 and 14. And they will talk to me and tell me how they feel and how much they appreciate my husband and I. And it's really great. So yes, it's nurtured over time. I'm hoping it never ends also because it's so beautiful. I'm always prepared that, hey, things change, people change, it's all good. But I think in their core, I'm always going to know how they really feel. There's that beautiful, beautiful relationship that's developed. So I hope that for you and yours also. And so as a busy military wife and a mom of small children and also a business owner, how do you make space for yourself in the midst of it all and still move the needle forward on your business with all of your responsibilities?
Oh, it's so hard. The first thing that I would say is that getting really clear with my kids about like mommy time has been one of the biggest things that I've ever done. And it's still hard. Like it's still, not just because one of my kids is nonverbal, mostly because my kids are young and they need me. And especially with remote school and being home with each other for months and months and months and all of that, it's still so hard. But my kids know, like, this is when mommy is doing exercise. This is when mommy is doing yoga. If I'm sitting in meditation, you don't ask me questions, right? If it's an emergency, sure. Like if the house is burning down, if you've gotten hurt. But if it's just like, hey, mommy, can you make me food? No, like I'm sitting in meditation right now. If you want to sit with me, you can sit on my lap, you can sit next to me, that's fine. But this is my time. And it's just reaffirming that message over and over and over and saying like, I do this so that I can have time for you. Because if I don't do this and I don't make time for myself, and then I try to make time for you, I'm going to be really grouchy about it. Like we all need time for ourselves. That's a big part of it. And the other part is not asking it to be perfect. You talked about that earlier. Not asking for it to be perfect, not asking it to be extensive even. Saying 5 minutes is enough. And that's not selling myself short. Like that's the message actually that I hear still even from like some of the leaders in like the self-care world. Even some of my mentors, like some of the women that I very much look up to, like I've still heard them say, you need to give yourself more than 5 minutes. Like you need to make time. You need to do this. And my response is, well, I think that depends.
Seasons, right?
Seasons. But even some of them are ones with young kids. And I'm like, I'm going to have to differ from you on this. I'm also like a firm believer in not like putting things in my schedule. Because I think when you put self-care on your schedule, it makes it like something to check off the list as opposed to like a thing that you do. And so I'm much more in that place of creating routines and rituals, very specific stackable habits. It's like, these are my morning routines that just flow into each other. And they don't have to be in the exact same order every time.
Change is good.
So there are certain things within my morning routine in my bathroom. And I'm on the floor of my bathroom right now because it's the quietest place in my house.
And it doesn't even echo, which is awesome.
I know. Well, that's the headphones really. But there are certain things in the morning that, it's like I scrape my tongue first and then I do my body brushing and then I put oil on my body. So not the traditional Abhyanga of Ayurveda. It's not heated up oil poured in a certain way, but it is like I rub oil on my body every day before I go out and do everything else. But then sometimes I sit in meditation first. Sometimes I move my body first. Sometimes I sit and I write first. But like I have 3 very specific practices I do every day. And if I don't do a full 30 minutes of yoga, no problem. I can stop and do 5 minutes of yoga after I make lunch for the kids, or I can do 5 minutes of yoga when I want to take a break from work. Like it doesn't have to be this rigid, my self-care practice is an hour of this and an hour, it's like, I think that as moms, we tend to get caught up in idealized self-care instead of real life self-care.
Yes, 100%.
And we do that. Oh, I know, because I love what you post. We're so on board. But it's, we get caught on the trap of it's like all or nothing, like it has to be 60 minutes of yoga or it's not good enough. It has to be 30 minutes of meditation or it's not good enough. It has to be, whatever. And it's like, well, that also gives you a lot of outs, gives you a lot of ways that you can blame motherhood for not being able to do the things that make you feel good. Instead of saying like, hey, I got on my mat for 5 minutes today. I'm a beast, like I managed to do 5 minutes of yoga when my kids were like screaming at me for breakfast and I stayed on my mat. Like I sat in meditation while my son was pulling on my hair and my daughter was nursing. And I did that very real life meditation. And that prepares me so much more for everything else, which actually like leads me to something that I think I love about my daughter so much. And my son too. And one of the things about yoga that I am most proud of teaching them, right? It's not that my kids watch TV doing headstands and handstands, which they do. It's not that my daughter, who wants to be a YouTuber, which I have mixed feelings about, like creates YouTube videos for kids like her. It's that when she gets worked up about something, she knows to take a deep breath to help her calm down. She knows that if she breathes in and out, she can use that to regulate her emotions. And even if she doesn't do that on her own, and my son doesn't necessarily do that on his own, I'll give an example of my son doing that. So it's the thing that I love about my 2 older kids, but one that I will teach my youngest, and I will teach her as soon as she has words. And I teach it to her now too, like we breathe together, right? But my son he was so proud of himself. He finished his breakfast because he wanted to share his dad's smoothie. Okay. And my husband did not want to share his smoothie because I made it just for him. But he said, if you finish the other breakfast that mommy made for you, if there's smoothie left, I'll share it with you. So my son finished his breakfast and he went to show the bowl to my husband, but he tripped and he spilled some of the milk on the floor. And my husband got angry and yelled, not loudly, not aggressively, but was just Archer, just out loud, and then brought it back. My son started to freak out, just started to cry because he loves his daddy so much. And he was like, I've disappointed my dad. And so he just started to cry and got really upset. And he was about to run away and I grabbed him and he was like, no, no, no. And usually I'll let him run off. But I wanted him to know that mistakes happen, that daddy still loves him, even if he's angry. Mm-hmm. Right? Which is something we always talk about, that mistakes are something to learn from, not something to be upset about. And I said to him, I was like, I need you to look at me. Let's take a few breaths together. And he took like a really shaky, and then the next one was easier. And then the next one was easier. And we sat there for a minute, just breathing. And he calmed down. And this to me is this is the yoga. We make such a big deal about the physical postures, which are awesome. And I love them too. But if the greatest thing that I teach ever is how to help my kids regulate their emotions through their breathing, then I've done an okay job teaching yoga.
Yes. My goodness. Teaching emotional regulation. Imagine there are adults in our midst, sometimes myself included.
Yeah, me too.
Where I don't know how to regulate my emotions and was never taught. Imagine had we been walked through that at such a young age. That is a beautiful gift. Absolutely. And it's one that I think we all can really give to our kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that to me, circling it back around, I guess, to why I do what I do. I work with busy moms to help them make time for themselves on and off their mats. That is my mission. I think that busy moms and women in particular are terrible at making time for themselves because they're really good at making time for other people. And that allows them to make excuses for why they don't have time for themselves. It gives you an easy out. My kids are being nuts. We're doing remote school. Everything is hard. I don't have time for me because I've got to deal with this, right? So I work with moms because I think that moms don't always give themselves what they need when they need it. On the other hand, if I can work with moms and teach them how to breathe, if I can work with moms and just teach them that 5 minutes is enough, maybe that filters through to their kids. Maybe they can say, I gave myself 2 minutes to sit down and breathe so that when my kid gets temper tantrumy and totally bonkers, I can breathe through it. And then I can teach them how to do that. It's okay, that's powerful.
That is transformative. That's generationally transformative because
that's the hope. Yeah.
The whole feeling, the emotion, the emotional center of the home is completely different when people are learning how to manage those emotions and not to not have them.
Oh yeah.
To acknowledge them, sit with them, but then breathe through them and then not need other substances or need to be angry all the time or need combat to get through it. There's so many different ways. So that's, yes, for the women that you're working with, again, another incredible gift, the simplicity of it and the practicality of it. Watching you doing your yoga while you're feeding baby girl, doing yoga while you're outside doing handstands while the kids are climbing a tree. It doesn't have to be this perfect thing. And yet it's perfect because you're actually challenging yourself in new ways. You're bringing joy through the process of doing those particular postures, but you're actually, it's even the way you watch the floor, everything. It's so cool. I invite everyone to go watch your YouTube channel because there's some cool stuff there and follow you on Instagram. And actually, what's coming up for you next that people can look for and how do people find you and follow you?
People can find me in most places at Conscious Healthy Mama. That's my website is conscioushealthymama.com. I have a freebie for moms that's 7 quick practices that you can do every day for a week, really. It's 5-minute practices that are tailored to a different part of your body so that like every day you've got something on your mat or off for like 5 minutes. My yoga quickies series, because I like to think of myself as the queen of quickies. So they can find that pretty easily on my website. I'm at Conscious Healthy Mama on Facebook and Instagram. Those are the places that I hang out the most. My YouTube channel, though, is Naomi Gottlieb Miller. That was set up well before I rebranded from Moms. So that one, you have to look up my actual name, but it's pretty easy to find. And I will say that for me, yoga has always been not just about like what I do on my mat, but about what I do off, right? Like yoga is a lifestyle. It's how I live my life, or how I try to, like you said, like, yeah, I yell at my kids sometimes too. Like there are moments where I definitely do not breathe through things, and there are huge moments where I make mistakes and, where we struggle and we fight. But I also think of it as like, it's what are the tools that I have to get back to this place where, we can be human with each other again. So some of the other things that I have coming up, the program that I have that is happening right now as people are listening is Yoga for Healthy Hips. And it is a program sort of, again, from the Queen of Quickies, a bunch of quick practices targeted toward your hips to make them not just more mobile, but actually stronger. We have an idea of our hips that we want them to be more flexible, but flexibility isn't really something that is attached to hips anyway. It's more about mobility, but also about strength and stability. And so really incorporating all of those things so that your hips are ultimately healthier. So that is a program that is coming out shortly. And there's some other things that lead up to it that are kind of fun. And in the new year, I will have a program for moms for creating a better morning routine to set you up for a really good day. So that's happening. There are a lot of things happening.
Wonderful. Well, Naomi, it has been such a joy and a pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks for having me.
Just want to say for our listeners, if you love this conversation, share it to your Instagram stories and tag me at Sheila A. Botello and Naomi at Conscious Healthy Mama. And contacts are all going to be listed in the show notes. When you do, let us know what your biggest takeaway was from this conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you, Naomi. See you next time.
Thank you so much for being here with me on the Connect podcast. If you like this episode, please share it with someone you think would enjoy it. Also, if you head over to iTunes to leave a review, I'd be so grateful. Let us know what your favorite parts were and what you'd like to hear more of. It will help us have a greater impact, elevating many more people to grow and succeed together. See you next time.